Unbelievable.
Well, you know what? You may be able to see my waveforms, but I can see yours, bucko.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So anyway, Christmas Carol 2019 fucking sucks.
Yeah. Okay. Let me just. Yeah.
I don't even know where to begin and how awful this shit is.
Yeah.
Okay, so basically, everyone knows the story of A Christmas Carol, right?
Yeah, I think that's like it's public domain, so everyone's taking a stab at it. So like purely by saturation, you've had to have seen some version of it.
Right, and I guess if anybody was listening to this that didn't know what Christmas Carol is, the basic idea is this unscrupulous capitalist who has had his life, kind of handed to him. Never had to examine.
Privileged Victorian man.
He's never had to examine what he has done before, and now in his twilight years, he has to examine it.
And he was placed right from school into business.
Right.
Yeah.
And the only socialization he had as a child was from his older sister.
So he's unsocial.
Because she died.
He's badly socialized. He didn't really have a proper childhood because he grew up in the Victorian ages. And in his later years of life, after his business partner dies, he kind of has to come to terms with the things that he's actually done in his life and what that means for him and his soul. And through visiting with these 3 ghosts that are sent by the ghost of his partner, he's able to come to terms with himself, who he is, what he's done, and how he can make amends in the later parts of his life.
And it's all at Christmas, so we all feel real good about it. Because, hey, Christmas, giving to the poor and destitute. Remember those people? Remember the people you put there? Yeah, could you help them a little bit?
So...
Draws in a little bit more focus.
So every single moral that A Christmas Story kind of delivers on...
Christmas Carol.
Excuse me.
Ralphie grows up to be Scrooge.
Oh, no.
Oh, shit, no.
No one's
Time travel.
No one's getting rid of a baby gun.
Oh, jeez. But the main morals of A Christmas Carol are that people have good deep inside them, and sometimes they need to be made aware of the suffering of others in ways that they couldn't come to know on their own.
It's just a story of learning to see the world outside of your position of privilege.
And
yes.
Scrooge is approached in many different ways throughout many different adaptations.
But he's never been evil, just ignorant.
He's usually been ignorant, or the book defines him as a cold, wrenching, unfeeling hand at the grindstone. Like, the man was just all business all the time, and he was just a grouchy, shitty old miser. Sometimes he hated fucking just people in general, because who doesn't if you work in business with the public? But he never went out of his way to be a dickhead. That's just who he was. He was a goddamn fucking capitalist curmudgeon loser.
He was never more insidious or deep than that.
Just an old penny-pinching grouch.
So I guess the people that were in charge of Christmas Carol 2019 looked at this story and were like, how can we make him the most unsympathetic, hateable, unredeemable piece of shit
and still try to redeem him?
Well, ladies and gentlemen, thankfully through the grace and mercy of FX and BBC, we have been brought a 2019 3-part miniseries adaptation of A Christmas Carol that is 3 hours long. And with no story, and instead, now I was on board with the concept of a reinterpretation of it. I saw the trailer for it, but as someone who has a very soft spot for the Christmas Carol movies, and I've seen like nearly all of them, this is, whoa boy, we need to talk about this. If you've seen this advertised, you've seen this on Hulu or something, you've been thinking about it. I mean, go ahead and watch it, I guess, but maybe you should listen to some of what's going to be discussed, because maybe we can save you the trouble of watching this fucking mess of a cringe edge fest, which I was into it for the first bit of it. We'll get into this, but it tanked hard for me. It
tanked really hard.
Some of us, weren't into it at all, but
I was lost from the trailers.
The trailer...
Sorry, we are doing our hair right now, and I just got some bleach on my pants.
luckily you got that towel right there.
Yes.
So if you're expecting to like see something that's this kind of modern interpretation of the story, or maybe taking our more relevant ideals when it comes to giving and capitalism and welfare and all of these things, giving them a more modern tone so that they're more appropriate for, say, our day and age, as opposed to when the original text was written.
Except we're going to keep it set in the
Yeah,
Victorian
we're
period.
still set in the 1700s or whatever the fuck it is, 1800s.
So they made Scrooge hot? Question mark? Like, they tried to make him...
They tried to give him that Mads Mikkelsen appeal.
Yeah, like the silver
Geralt.
fox. Yeah, he's got this like weird silver fox thing going on, and his hair's all slicked back, all like professional and attractive, and I am the top tier man. Like
He looks like Adrian Shepard from Hunt Down the Freeman.
Like when you think of Ebenezer Scrooge, what do you think of?
A decrepit old man.
Yeah.
Yes, you think of somebody who is well past how long they should have lived, is running on spite.
My definitive of Scrooge is Alistair Sims' performance of him, which is an appropriate Scrooge.
Yes.
This was not.
Oh my God. Regardless of the direction I think that you take your Christmas Carol, your Scrooge, who is meeting the spirits of the Christmas time, that Scrooge needs to be old. He needs to be an elderly man who is near death's door himself.
And that's not to say this is a young Scrooge by any means.
But he's more like 40s Scrooge instead of Scrooge in his 80s, which is the Scrooge that you're supposed to be meeting.
Ancient fuck.
This old miserly fuckhead who let his life embitter him and needs to learn the spirit of giving and love.
One major thing that they did that I think ended up making Scrooge like that, and I feel like that's almost why they did that, is then they tried to free themselves from the confines of the original Dickens story and sort of just... Because most interpretations you'll see will just utilize the book basically as their script, line for line, word for word, adaptations here and there.
Right.
This was just a brand new script with all sorts of strange, meaningless conversations.
Lots of plot threads that were dropped, went nowhere. His nephew shows up, right? In the very beginning, Fred, and he's like doing his standard...
Come to dinner, Uncle!
We really want to see you, blah, blah, blah. And Scrooge is like, no, I'm Scrooge.
And then he has a moment where he's like, look, at my wife's behest, this is the last time I will be asking you. This is your last chance to come and dine with us for the holidays, because I'm not going to ask anymore.
Not going to do this bullshit, man.
So Scrooge is just like, oh, well, good. And then Fred leaves.
That's literally it with Fred.
And we never see him again.
Not even after the conclusion.
There is not even the standard he shows up at Fred's house and joins the party for Christmas Day. That's gone.
And it's not like there's an issue with taking the material and doing something different with it. That's why I wanted to see this, because I wanted to see a fresh take. But just forgetting to work with something that you established in the first bit and just kind of like, well, Fred was in this one scene and that's literally it. It's just like, that's just crappy. That's lazy. That screams of some production issues.
On the subject of Scrooge's family, what is going on here?
His sister is dead, but we're not dead like she was supposed to be.
So
yeah,
they're reworking entirely. It starts from the ground up, right?
Yeah, we should just start
Originally in the text, Scrooge's father was described as a really cold, like not quite loving father.
He was the man who instilled that for-profit, business-first mindset onto Scrooge.
Right, which this interpretation has chosen to take as aggressively abusive.
Oh, dude.
Aggressively abusive.
Comedic villain abusive.
He decapitating a mouse.
Scrooge's pet mouse.
Yeah, it's revealed in the very first scene with the Ghost of Christmas Past that Scrooge was given a small mouse for a Christmas present.
Yeah.
His father came home, flipped shit, and decapitated the mouse in front of Scrooge.
And then beat the shit out of him.
And then beat the shit out of Scrooge. And on the surface, that's not like a horrible idea, I guess, to make his father blatantly abusive. But holy shit.
Yeah.
That's over the top in so many ways. And then...
I'll get your undercut first. Then
I think the best way to go about this is to try to, like, tackle all these ground up things before getting fully into them. So we know the father's fucked up, sister relations fucked up, and we'll get into all of that as
the mother didn't die.
The mother was still alive, even though she was supposed to have died giving birth to Ebenezer. So that's fucked up. And even from the very first scene in the movie, which started well enough but, quickly lost steam, was that Marley was dead to begin with.
And then...
That's true.
The scene when they go with Christmas Past to see his old boss.
Yeah, that's just gone.
Gone. We never see him.
But I wanted to start, like, sort of chronologically through the film as it begins. Like, we're changing the whole impetus for Marley's involvement. The film, it's a mini-series, but we're just going to call it a film because we watched it like one. It's presented like one.
It is.
We start off where we see a dude... this really sets the tone, I think, for the film. Pissing on Marley's grave. And Marley gets pissed on in the coffin.
I honestly love that. I like that addition. Great. It's a strong opening.
It was a very strong opening.
It was good. I did like that. That was one of the few good moments of this movie.
And that's the biggest problem, is that there's a lot of really good moments that, like...
It opens well.
I feel like this entire film or this miniseries, it is a collection of really good lines and funny moments that they thought of that they had to then pad in between.
With edginess.
So much edge and darkness.
So much. And it's not to say, like, Christmas Carol isn't the perfect story for edge and darkness. It's got that kind of in it already.
That's part of why it's so good, because you can get away with that because of the joy that you're bringing out of Christmas with it, like the dichotomy.
Part of the thing that is important to making a Christmas Carol dark is you have to bring back the light.
Yes.
It has to come back to that happy ending, or what's the point of Scrooge ever meeting the ghosts? There's no point.
Well, in this one, the point is, and again, this is already where we're sort of reaching a strange point, is that Marley's laying dead in his coffin, and he's like, yo, I'm dead, but I'm still stuck here. I want repentance. Get me the fuck out of here.
Give me peace.
Give me peace. And so his fucking, like, coffin, like, gets sent into, like, this hell purgatory, and...
He meets a black man.
A black man blacksmith who he killed in one of his his blacksmithies because of improper business practices, who never gets addressed again.
Yeah.
Might I add.
One of two black people in this entire series.
And then he's like, oh, you asked for repentance. Well, your calls have been answered. The spirits have a job for you. We go out and see... So already... And Marley's dead only 1 year by the time this starts. Traditionally, he's dead for 7.
And they never really...
There's no reason for that.
They don't ever make that matter. They're changing for how long Marley's been dead. That never matters. It's never come to be like, oh... It's so we can show more of Scrooge falling to pieces or something. No, it's just...
We see Marley get his chains and get told that each one is a life that he has taken through his, business and practices. He ends up getting, like, dragged by horse and carriage through into this field of Christmas trees and empty, voidal vastness save for those trees in a giant burning pyre, where we meet the ghost of Christmas Past, which... I thought that whole bit was actually quite excellent.
The Ghost of Christmas Past is, I like the interpretation.
It was done by Andy Serkis, and no one else could have done it like him.
Yeah. Especially
because it gets pretty silly in parts. We'll talk about Alibaba in a little bit.
Oh, jeez, yeah.
Fucking Alibaba.
Yeah, that happens. And basically we get told, like, well, you asked for repentance, you want peace... The only way you're going to get that is if Scrooge gets better. Your soul is tied to his fate. And we want to see if there is any good in him at all.
And can we just say that that's super contrived?
It really is.
It's also super contrived with a little bit of homoeroticism.
Yeah, but they really don't lean into the homo feelings there.
No.
Why on earth should their souls be connected? Are every single person who commits crimes together, are their souls connected forever? Are they...
Like, it was Scrooge and Marley. They did this together.
Yeah, but say, like, you were, running in a thief gang, right? and you happen to be pickpocketing all these people all the time, and you were only doing it for survival, but then somebody you did it with was only doing it for their own gain. Are you then, by these rules, tied to their soul, so you have to make them do better so that you don't go to hell, even though you were doing it for... Like,
Scrooge and Marley were both together in it for the same motives, though.
Yeah, but it's still contrived to have their souls connected.
It definitely is. And the ghost was really cool. He kind of had this, again, being played by Andy Serkis, he says, I burn memories to ash, and he's like burning all these Christmas trees in a pyre and memories and stuff, and it kind of has a malevolent feeling to it. It feels very cold. He doesn't seem to care. He's a very neutral party.
I like that the spirits in this one don't care.
Yeah, they're just like, what the hell, why not? And he even has this weird kind of like Jesus thing going on where he's wearing a crown of thorns.
Which I think is a call forward to the Ghost of Christmas Present and the standard interpretation of Ghost of Christmas Present.
Yeah.
It's very different in this iteration.
Very.
But in the standard iteration,
it's
just Santa Claus with a wreath of holly.
Yeah. This guy kind of reminded me of Tim from Monty Python and the Holy Grail. Just looked weird.
Some who call me
Tim! Honestly, so many of the spirits and shit looked like goddamn, like, Soulsborne bosses. It was fucking stupid. So, he's like, well, we'll see if Scrooge is gonna repent. And from there, Scrooge doesn't meet any spirits for, like, a fucking 45 minutes. Because we have just all the...
So much exposition.
Most of which is delivered through dialogue.
And not very good dialogue.
No.
Like, we had...
It's like the writers were very determined to be constantly one-upping themselves and each other with the dialogue. Every line had to be snappier and wittier than the last.
And that doesn't befit the relationship that Scrooge and Cratchit are to have, because after we get all the weird supernatural stuff with Marley out of the way, a lot of it is Scrooge and Cratchit and their weird working relationship, which is supposed to be, boss and Clark. But instead there's like this very strange, like, back and forth, tit for tat, like, almost flirty weirdness to it.
There's a lot of weird homoeroticism in Scrooge's relationships.
Yes, multiple men.
Which makes some of the later decisions they made with this iteration super, super uncomfortable.
Yeah, it's weird. And in that scene is also established, because we're making Scrooge sympathetic by fucking him up, is established that he's got OCD.
Yeah, so it's implied through the text that Scrooge has OCD and his obsessive compulsion to count everything is in part why he is such a successful businessman. Okay. And
why he's also a grouch, because all the fucking, noises outside is driving him nuts, and he wants a letter of concern filed to the city. He has no balls to go out there himself and yell at them.
Which is not my Scrooge.
Not my Scrooge.
Not my Scrooge.
My Scrooge would lean out the window and yell at them to shut the fuck up.
My Scrooge would get his fucking cane, get out the door like, get off my lawn, you whippersnappers. That's my Scrooge.
Yeah, dude.
Not like...
Or the classic Alistair Sim, be off with you!
Yes. Can we talk, though, about how they ruined one of the most classic lines, though? It's just like, bit of undigested beef. Like, he just kind of...
They didn't have him eat at all!
No, he even said it's because I didn't eat!
Yeah, no, they did pull those lines in, though, when he starts closing the windows later, and he's like, oh, you're just a bit of undone potato, and... The whole time I'm like, oh, so you did read the book. Thanks.
All throughout this, it kind of, Scrooge seems as uninvested as most of the audience is probably going to be. He doesn't seem to care.
It seems like this actor got this script, realized it was trash, and was like, I can't save this.
I don't know.
Copy this letter 3 times, Cratchit. Cratchit copies it 3 times, gives him the 3rd one, which is perfect. You're angry with me, aren't you, Mr. Cratchit? Like,
literally, that makes no sense.
And then there's the whole bit where it's like, oh,
humans don't interact like this.
He launches into a whole tirade, which Cratchit even comments on as being very out of character for him, about, why on Christmas is everyone nice?
That is a consistent theme with this iteration, where it uses dialogue to justify the changes that it makes.
Yeah.
As if pointing out that it made a change is enough to justify the change having happened.
Scrooge is like, we're all nice on Christmas and jerks the rest of the time. Why not the other way around? And Cratchit's like, every clerk in England would show up for work that day, tell their boss what they think. And Scrooge's like, what do you think of me? And Cratchit doesn't say anything.
Cratchit's like, that's not important.
And then he's like, you've never shared your philosophy with me in the 10 years I've worked for you. Why now? And he's just like,
I still haven't. He said,
Yeah.
I still haven't. And then he refused to elaborate.
I don't think Cratchit wanted to hear any more either. I think he was sick of it. Man wanted to go home. He could go home at 4 that day.
Oh my god.
Until he had to go home at 3. But at 4.
Hey, real quick. Can we mention the whole time travel thing that happened inexplicably and never got addressed?
Yes!
Where
I forgot about that.
Scrooge is like, oh, please let it be 4. Oh, I want to go home at 4.
Yeah, he lets Cratchit home early, but he refuses to leave the office until business hours are over.
He clearly doesn't have any work to do.
No,
He's
it's all done.
He's just being pedantic fucking Scrooge.
Will not be ruled by the holiday.
Yes, he won't be ruled by the holiday. So he pulls out his stopwatch and he sets the timer on his pocket watch to 4 o'clock, and then
it says, lie to me, please. Tell me it's 4 and I'll believe you.
And then it's 4.
It actually is 4.
What?
We see the sun set, people go do things, candles are burned down.
And that is never addressed. It just happens. You know, right, that it's possible for film to just skip ahead to another scene.
And it's not like it was a stylistic choice, per se, to skip ahead. Scrooge genuinely looks around concerned, like, yo, what the actual fuck just happened?
And that's it.
Yeah.
That's it. There's no consequences of him skipping an hour. There's nothing addressed about it.
And this is before the spirit started intervening in his life, because that only happens...
This was still while Marley was, like, doing woo-woo noises.
Yeah, Marley was doing woo-woo noises and trying to get the spirits to, be convinced Scrooge was worth the effort. And that didn't happen until we have the horses.
Right.
Which, fair enough, that was an okay change. And I will say, for as silly as, like, Cratchit's interactions with Scrooge was, I did like Cratchit's interactions with him, because it felt like Cratchit was just sick of him and was a man on the verge of handing in his resignation, which he was.
Which is an interesting, bolder personality.
Yeah, than the quiet, frail man behind the desk.
But that's not my Mr. Cratchit.
No, he was charming
They make Cratchit
enough,
hot
but...
too, and that's weird.
Yeah, Cratchit was weirdly
Cratchit
hot.
is not hot.
Cratchit was young and hot.
Cratchit is supposed to be about a middle-aged father. He's doughy and balding, and he's
doing his best for his family.
He's just doing his best. He's living his life. He's trying to get a happier time for everything, and he's dealing with some pretty intense situations, like with his disabled son. Which I guess at least props to this version for actually having a disabled kid play Tiny Tim.
He was adorable. I liked him a lot.
He was sassy.
But the Cratchit family is a fucking disaster.
Yeah, I suppose if we're going to talk about the Cratchit family a little bit, because we do see them quite a bit throughout this movie.
I would say that they are more main characters than Scrooge.
We need to talk about the inexplicable and bizarre choice to make Mrs. Cratchit not only a black woman, but, and I mean, hey, that's fine, go and do that, but with spiritual powers.
Yeah, the entire implication is Scrooge directly fucks over Mrs. Cratchit, and so she summons the spirits to teach him a lesson. Which makes no sense going back to the whole Marley thing.
We never see her do it.
We never see her do it. She just says that she does it. But
in the trailer moment.
It's a trailer moment. And in the end, it's kind of doubled down upon with Scrooge thanking her for sending the spirits.
Maybe it was like a Kickstarter kind of thing. Like, you gotta get 2 votes on the spirits before they haunt you.
Yeah, maybe.
Needed Marley's input and needed her input. And they're like, alright, let's go. Alright, 2 is enough for me. 2 out of 3.
But they gave Mrs. Cratchit a much bigger role than she's ever had before. And they totally squandered it for some misogynoir, scary voodoo bitch witch thing. And they also completely victimized her in a way that was utterly unnecessary.
Yeah, the whole Mrs. Cratchit plotline, which we will get to when we move on to talking more about all the traumatic past stuff that Scrooge was shown, because that really begs a discussion unto itself beyond just, wow, the Cratchit dynamics.
Because honestly, that was 90% of the film.
Yeah.
Is spending time with the Ghost of Christmas Past. We spend very little time with the other ghosts and very little time with just the living people. It's mostly with the Ghost of Christmas Past.
When we see eventually, after ages of, Marley wandering through the Christmas tree field and talking to Andy Serkis Ghost, and the Cratchits doing their thing, and Bob getting 7 years later, suspicious about the money. Was it 7 years later?
I don't
Yeah.
It was.
Suspicious about the money. 7 years later, suspicious about the money used...
Only because she started acting weird
for Tim's surgery.
Every time Tim started writing letters to the cousin that supposedly saved him.
The cousin in America that paid for Tim's operations. The one that doesn't exist.
They really, really set it up like... I don't even know. It's just very unnecessarily daytime drama.
Contrived as hell.
Yeah.
So, we get a lot of this setup, and it's funny. We're watching this as we're recording this and doing everything else. We just got it on mute with the subtitles on, just, for reference. And where the film right now is still showing us Marley going through the fucking Christmas tree field, looking at his memories. He still has not actually even met up with the Ghost of Christmas Past yet. He's about to, but he hasn't. And we're already ahead of all of this in our retelling of it. And we're not really leaving much out. That's just how bloated this execution is.
I would definitely compare it to, say, like, what they did to The Hobbit.
Absolutely.
Like The Hobbit, making that into 2 movies was already a stretch, right?
Yeah.
But making it into 3, a disaster. Turning A Christmas Carol into a 3-hour production, a disaster. There's so much unnecessary
with edge, with being sold on its edge.
Because it has to be edgy to justify its existence.
It's got so much extra bullshit in it, and they took away things that were in the original.
Yeah. Oh, what? You didn't have enough room in your 3 hours? You had to take some stuff away for your clearly better ideas?
Right? Meanwhile, we're just going to drop all of the plot threads related to those things.
Yeah, it's pointless. Who needs it? So, the impetus for Scrooge successfully unlocking haunt mode is when he comes home to his apartment, as he calls it, and he sees 2 black horses in a carriage outside of his outside of his abode, and he's like,
"Who left you here?"
Yeah, and he puts a blanket on him, to show that is the symbolic, yay, good for you, BioWare moment. After having other moments throughout the film
chose
where
the Paragon option.
because Marley woo-woos him by sending in the fucking 2 pennies at work, they get thrown down his chimney. He's like, well, hey, why now? And Cratchit encourages them to give him to carolers.
That's another thing, is his reaction to the pennies, though, because he literally just says, why now? What do you mean, Scrooge?
Oh, yesterday? What's more convenient for you?
What is a more convenient date for the ghost pennies to fall down your work chimney?
And he even comments, these were the pennies that I put on Marley's eyes. I read the dates.
I don't even if he read the dates, it's ridiculous for him to have known that, because that's just silly. There's as if there's only 1 coin made per year, right?
Yeah, one penny from this year and 1 penny from that year, and they were both over Marley's eyes.
Right, and it's silly, but I guess they justify it as to why he would know.
And Marley is new to this whole ghost thing, apparently. So I guess. So when he does the classic scene in which he appears in Scrooge's door knocker, it's partial, and Scrooge somehow knocks off the knocker's jaw after it's crying at him.
Yeah, so then when Marley actually shows up in ghost flesh form, he doesn't have his jaw.
His larynx is just hanging out like...
And his jaw's just on the floor, and Scrooge is just mildly disturbed.
He, like, picks it up, he's like, the fuck is this?
Scrooge isn't like, like a normal person would be, screaming. Scrooge is just like, oh, this is horrifying.
He doesn't do much of anything, dude.
Scrooge is completely, like... unreactive and muted, and his oh my gosh, he's not a great actor. If this is he might be better.
Guy Pearce.
He might be better in other things. I've never seen him before in anything else, but if this is like this as my first impression, he's awful. He cannot emote, or he just doesn't want to.
For all the terrible things he sees himself do and sees done unto him, he just does not.
He has the same expression pretty much the whole movie.
Stone sour.
Bella Swans it.
Yes. He Bella Swans through the movie.
Oh my god.
He only exists as like some kind of audience avatar.
And it's bad. It's bad. So after we get over this, like, I was charmed by it. Because at this point when I was watching it, I didn't know what I knew now. So I was still charmed by some of this over-the-top, needless silliness, creepiness, darkness. Like, hey, you know what? I have a soft spot for that.
Right,
The Marley jaw was silly, but you know what? What the fuck ever. And I liked the reinterpretation of the see what's passed between us bit. A classic bit that sometimes gets done, rarely does, honestly, is when Marley's about to leave. He'll say, look so that you may know what has passed between us, and now look to see me no more. And he shows, he says these are the spirits of good the spirits of those who seek to interfere for good in human measures. And it's implied that Scrooge sees out his window all the specters of people they fucked over. In this, he sends them out into a goddamn factory that they failed to keep up to code, and it like blew up and they killed everyone. I liked that.
A much more in-your-face example of what they did commit, like the atrocities that they did commit through their business practices.
Their hubris and negligence. And people call them out and said, you did this. But did you really need to? This is like show, don't tell.
Yes.
Like, this is very much show. It's of course implied that, this is something Scrooge did. You don't need everyone to be like, hey, this is your fault. You did this.
That's another thing that this series has a very big issue with, is the show, don't tell.
It's all show.
Yeah.
Wait, no. It's all tell. I'm sorry. God. I wish it was all show.
Right. Then it would be worth it being a show.
It's all tell.
But yeah, it's all tell. All of the exposition is in dialogue. They tell you things that you should already know if you know the story.
They're talking at you.
Yeah. There's several points where, for instance, Ghost or Spirit Scrooge gets noticed by people that are alive in the scene for whatever reason.
It's implied that it's because, like, he puts out a strong energy, and sometimes people can also sense spirits when they're in states of extreme emotion.
Yeah, and that's not so bad or unbelievable, but the way that it's done both times is it happens, and then immediately the ghost explains that it's happening and why it's happening, instead of you just being like, oh shit, they can see him. Why? Holy shit, they can see him.
Yeah, there's the only.
I might need to
the only
touch up
things,
but you're pretty saturated right now.
The only things you're going to be left wondering are not because they've left it open to interpretation. It's because they've left gaping wide fucking plot holes the size of your anus.
Yeah.
Everything else will be explained to you, whether you like it or not. You will be talked at for 3 hours in this fucking movie.
The kid they have playing Fred looks vaguely like Ryan Gosling.
You know what? Yeah.
And that's because that's what's on screen right now. That's what we were commenting on. Yeah, Fred has just showed up to the office.
I'm quite upset that Fred got such the
shaft.
The shaft.
This is literally the only time he shows up.
He was kind of important to Scrooge's character, being his only living relative.
His only living relative, which in the Alistair Sim version, Fan, his sister, in her dying wish says Ebenezer, and like I said, this is my canon version, says Ebenezer, please take care of Fred. And Ebenezer had a hatred for Fred because of the hatred that his own father had for him, because Scrooge's mother died during childbirth. Scrooge's old man never forgave Scrooge as if it was his fault, so Scrooge passed that on to Fred. That's completely thrown out the window in favor of some other weird family dynamics, and Fred just gets the shaft. The guy showed up for 5 minutes of recording, and then they never used him again. They probably paid him like Kit Kats.
And I want to say that it bears noting that even in the original, where we get that full breadth of the relationship between Fred and Ebenezer, Fred is so kind and forgiving and loving and understanding of his hateful, bitter uncle. He gives him so many chances. He is
Every year.
so kind to that man. Every year. Every year he keeps trying.
At the very least, in this version, he does seem hesitant to leave when he's desperately trying to get Scrooge, because when the bit we just saw, it looks like he doesn't want to leave the office. He doesn't want to stop inviting Scrooge, but he knows he has to. He knows his wife is right. But that's never addressed again.
Nope.
And just as well, like, they set up a plot thread that they do pick up on because or what's her name in this version? Lottie. When Lottie doesn't die during childbirth, apparently she has more than enough time to tell Fred, hey, love and take care of your brother well, because that man carries a great pain. Not brother, your uncle. That man carries a great pain with him. Instead of, her dying, she's able to live long enough to tell him that and have it mean something to him. Because, boy, we want to set up for the stinger we got planned for you, the movie says to us. So, yeah, Fred's just there for that! To set up that!
Uncomfortable, unnecessary stinger.
Yeah, we'll, before we actually discuss that, because we're moving sequentially through the movie, we will provide a bit of a warning before we get into the point of no return of how sharply this movie drops into
and it
content.
is sharp, and you will want these content warnings.
Yeah,
because I sure wish we had content warnings.
Yeah, this one, let's see, so...
there was absolutely nothing in the ratings on this whatsoever that gave you any kind of impression that the content...
There's the one black guy.
Oh, yep.
Yeah. We have the one black guy, aside from when we see him in Limbo, if that is the same guy.
It is the same guy.
We see him in Limbo. Scrooge looks out the fucking door.
And
he's gone!
Closes the door, he's gone. There goes the only black man in this entire 3-hour extravaganza.
When you make this intentional choice to make someone as not important as Mrs. Cratchit, very important, make her black, make her like a mystic spiritual person, and have the first person that's met in the underworld be
a black man.
And have it be him, and have him show up, but do nothing with him.
It just feels...
It's their brownie point checklist. They're going... Look, they want so badly to justify what they've done with this thing that they are going down a checklist of what to help make it acceptable. And that includes making Mrs. Cratchit black and throwing in another black guy in there just because, we gotta have our forced diversity, right?
Having diversity and representation is great. It should be a thing, but not if you're going to literally do nothing with them besides have them grandstand and be there for your token.
They are not characters in this series.
They are tokens for the quota.
Yeah, and
they're not done any justice.
And another thing I remembered was Scrooge's love interest. Do we remember what her name was?
In the original, in again, Alistair Sim, that's the version we'll reference. In Alistair Sim's film version, her name was, I believe, Alice.
Alice? Okay.
And in the Muppets version, which is my other favorite version, hate me if you want, but it's Belle.
Well, either way, Alice, Belle, she just doesn't fucking exist in this.
Yeah.
Yeah, no.
Which really, really sucks because she's a huge part of Scrooge's actual cold-heartedness. His inability to make amends between his personal life and his business life, his inability to see which is more important at what context.
There's even a line. She says,
yes.
You've changed. He says, what, towards you? I have not changed. She says, not towards me, but towards the world. You've become cold, greedy, bitter. And that's, she's observed that as a microcosm. Yeah, you've become that way towards the world. Not me yet, but you soon will be. I know, I see this trend in you. I know what you're becoming, and I'm saving myself from it. She's gone. Scrooge's gone. No love. No love.
That layer of character depth and development, gone.
Because she was there to be an anchor in his past. They met, because remember, Fezziwig is just tossed out the fucking window. Altogether.
What in this version have they kept for the Christmas past?
Well, let me think.
Like, outside
him going to school.
Him reading alone, that's it.
His sister rescuing him. And him becoming very profitable by buying up and selling businesses.
So the general concept is it. But all of those emotional beats that actually...
No emotion.
That actually make up who Scrooge is as a person and why he became the way he is and how he is capable of unlearning these things, those are gone.
Because the love interest was key to the fact that she says our promise, traditionally she says our promise was an old one. It was made when we were both poor and content to be so. If you did not know me, would you seek me out now, a poor dowerless girl, and make me yours? And of course Scrooge can't answer honestly, yes. But she's the anchor to his poor past. But now that he's successful, she realizes that, you know, he weighs all things by gain, and she is not gain to him. She's just a relic of who he once was. And that is a perfect illustration of his change. But nope, gone.
But nope. Instead of letting Scrooge be the man that chose his own bitter ways and let himself fall into it, he has now been pushed that way by circumstance. It's not Scrooge's fault he's this way. The world made him this way.
And we have the longest fucking introduction for the Ghost of Christmas Past. First, it takes the form of the mouse that his sister gave him for Christmas.
And it takes, like,
and he throws it out the window.
And then it takes the form of his father.
Who beats the shit out of him and then decapitates the mouse.
And then the ghost, I think it's then that it shows up as Andy Serkis.
Yes.
And then he's like, I'm not here to torture you. Then what was that? That was fucking torture.
And he's like, I'm here to find some light in your worthless soul.
And then they take him back to the past.
The horses. And who does Andy Serkis become? None other than Alibaba! And the excuse for it, I actually like. He says, I take the form of whatever was most important to you at this time.
It's just that it feels like the Alibaba thing is just another point towards, hey, we've got a diverse cast. We have a third person of color in London.
And I find it strange to imagine Scrooge reading Alibaba.
That doesn't seem like his type of literature.
Even as a child.
No.
And it doesn't seem like something that would be prevalent in London at that time either.
It's like, if anything, I would have seen him more into reading, like, Aladdin, specifically.
Yeah,
of the Arabian Night stories.
Yeah. But, like, they have Alibaba show up and say, oh yeah, I take the form of what means to you the most, because Scrooge used Alibaba books as escapism. And there's even a whole bit where, like, Alibaba appears to the young Scrooge, because our first bit of business is to go back to the school, the boarding school, and we see a bit where Alibaba appears to young Scrooge. It's a weird time fucking continuum.
Let's just get it out of the way right now. There's no solid timeline delivered.
No, none.
So we just kind of float through this space of this happened, and then this happened in the future at some point, but this also happened in Scrooge's
Alibaba
life.
shows up to Scrooge in the middle of when he's reading one of his books, and so the Ghost of Christmas Past, that is in the form of Alibaba, shows himself to young Scrooge while he's reading and gives him this whole, like, hallucination of all the Arabian palaces and stuff, and he's there and he's like, I'm Alibaba. And then young Scrooge sees him, and old Scrooge is like, I remember when you showed up to me. And young Scrooge somehow seems to see old Scrooge, and that's when we get into the time for the content warning.
Yeah, so
there's no going back from here. So if we're,
it's gonna be topics of sexual assault and child abuse
and rape.
And child prostitution and human trafficking.
And we will not be able to go forward without discussing those things, so if those are not for you, this is where it's going to have to end. Our bottom line, if you can't tell already, they pissed all over this like the dude pissed on Jacob Marley's grave.
Yeah.
So, thank you for joining us. Please don't watch this.
Please don't watch this, anyone.
Yeah,
this is
please
an audio
don't.
file.
We'll hopefully be back with something less terrible in the future. But for everyone else who's still here and is still okay with this, let's talk about the major changes and Scrooge's rape as a child.
Yeah, so Scrooge is a rape victim now.
Yeah, so apparently what the deal was is his father sold him to the headmaster of the boarding school.
And made up excuses every Christmas why Scrooge couldn't come home.
So that the headmaster would have free time to rape Scrooge as he pleased.
With all the other boys gone.
Over Christmas break, and this was all supposedly so the headmaster would waive school fees.
Yes, to waive school fees because the rich father couldn't afford it?
Apparently, yeah. Rich father couldn't afford the boarding school.
I mean, he does go bankrupt, but that's after the boarding school.
He does, yes. And why did he... I'm just saying, why didn't he sell his daughter into sexual slavery either? Like, she is less valuable to him than his son. He may abuse both of them, but just speaking from the contextual time period, she's less valuable.
Yeah, and this utilitarian man.
Yes.
If you're clearly willing to sell your kids into sex slavery...
Why not both?
Why not both, you fucking piece of shit?
Right, so then...
Lonnie shows up with a gun.
Yeah, so the headmaster is coming and he's about to rape Scrooge.
And the way it's revealed at first seemed like it was going to maybe be tasteful, but then was not.
No.
Because Scrooge is in the courtyard in front of the school, and we see the headmaster walking through the courtyard, and Ghost Scrooge, who is the Scrooge who's out there, I wanted to clarify, fucking grabs Alibaba's hatchet and swings at the headmaster. Goes through him because they're all spirits. He's like, I hate that man. And Alibaba's like, you see that man in your dreams every night, don't you?
Oh, come on. He's not a poo.
What?
He's not a poo.
A poo?
A poo, the guy that ran the convenience store in The Simpsons.
Until they got rid of him because he's racist.
I'd never actually seen that. I've never seen an episode of The Simpsons.
Well...
That's my bad. My
Yeah.
parents never let me watch it. But... And Scrooge is like, yeah, I hate that man. We're thinking, okay, he was a rape victim. Like, alright, sure. But then we get to see an event leading up to, probably like, what, the 100th rape. This has been going on for a while.
Like, he gets pretty close to showing we're getting into some questionable territory here.
He's like, we're all alone for the holidays.
And then...
You and me.
And then Scrooge sees out the window.
This is the Happy Christmas.
Scrooge sees out the window. Carriage roll up. Holy shit, it's his sister. He's saved from rape.
Because originally, Scrooge was just at the boarding school because it was a boarding school. The old man didn't give a fuck. He wanted to go and just get out of here, Scrooge. I don't need you. I don't want you. You're a mouth to feed. Fuck off.
There's nothing inherently sinister about the concept of a boarding school.
Just sucked to be Scrooge.
Yeah.
And his dad didn't care. He wasn't being raped, and in fact... More often, it was the school set him up with his job at Fezziwigs because he was a bright young mind, and they were preparing him for business. You will love business.
Right, like he's. Oh my gosh.
But no. Instead,
and we honestly we have this little showdown where we think that the headmaster is going to try and assault Scrooge's sister for coming to rescue him. And that's when she turns around and she's like, fuck you, I've got a gun.
After she tells Scrooge to leave, she's like, go on, Abby, go leave.
Right.
And Alibaba's like, you left at that part. Now here's the part you don't know.
Thank you, Alibaba.
You're welcome.
And
then she pulls a gun on the headmaster.
Which she doesn't use, unfortunately.
She's like, our father has been taken care of. I'll take care of you.
She certainly threatens him, but then she just kind of leaves the pedophile alive.
It was pretty badass, and I understand not wanting the murder charge, but you could have maybe at least, shot him in the dick,
I would have taken the murder charge.
I mean, I would have too, but...
I would have taken that in a heartbeat.
Very worth it.
Ebenezer can testify.
He can.
And
she even said, if you try and follow me, I'll have him testify about everything you did. She doesn't press charges. She doesn't take action. She just scares him and leaves.
But apparently, this is a big moment for Scrooge, and...
Because he's been forever saved from the rape.
But then he says later, it's like, what's wrong with me is that you're just too late to save me. I'm just too broken from it. I just can't be saved from it.
And he learns...
And I hate that.
And he learns nothing. After old man Scrooge sees Lottie save him and the whole showdown with the gun and everything, he's in the courtyard with Alibaba, and he's like, dude, see, that redeems me, that excuses me. See, I was raped as a kid, I was treated like shit, my sister saved me, but I'm fucked up purely because I was raped. I'm an evil capitalist pig because I was raped. That excuses me, right? And the spirit's just like, nope.
But then the rest of the movie just continues to be like, actually, that is the case. Because they don't actually pose another argument.
They don't.
Because
I was waiting for it.
Because they've taken out his love interest, because they've taken out his former boss, there is nothing else to imply Scrooge's, like, evilness or his wrongdoing except for the fact that he was traumatized as a kid.
And that's... Trauma can fuck you up, sure, but...
But trauma doesn't make you an abuser.
It can, but it doesn't absolutely and entirely, and to just blanketedly say, yeah, Scrooge was raped and now he's a piece of shit because of it, and is a rapist himself, oh yeah, we're gonna get to that, is insulting to anyone who's ever gone through that experience. I can only imagine.
Because from then, we move on with the Ghost of Christmas Past being, like...
Going through the business era.
Yeah, he's Uncle Moneybags.
Right, he's Uncle Moneybags. He's showing Scrooge the business and everything, and how people were directly suffering from the decisions he made, and just in general showing him from the outward perspective how
I did like...
he was.
Hitting the bong so we can get through this shit. I did like when there's a bit he took him to a printing mill or something, and we see a deal go down. That's whatever. That was harmless. I also did like when he took Scrooge to the mines. It was like, hey, remember when you cut costs on the wood you used down here? Yeah, that was important to keep the place together. All these people died because of you. And Scrooge and the spirit get trapped in the cave-in, and we see all the miners attempting to escape and reaching and grasping, and they all fucking get buried and die. And like, okay, that's effective. Like, fuck yeah, make this piece of shit live the horrors he wrought. Because he was raped. This is all because he was raped, by the way.
Yeah, because... Not just because he was raped.
Raped and abused.
Because he was trafficked as a child by his own parent. He went on to cause the deaths of thousands of people. Yay!
Because that's totally how that works.
Like, oh my gosh. Here's the thing, right, that I want to state, and there is nothing wrong with adaptations, with new interpretations, none of it. Oh, here's the silly jaw on screen right now.
There's the larynx.
Hate it.
There's nothing wrong with it, but when you are making an adaptation, every decision that you make that changes things has to be justified, and just saying that it's true does not justify it.
No.
So what all of these changes add up to in the end is the same old bullshit shtick that we hear, how people who are traumatized are forever broken, cannot be fixed, and will continue to hurt other people even when they are trying to do better. That's the message of this Christmas Carol.
You know, it's funny, I have a movie in my collection, it's like some short avant-garde art film, called A Bitter Message of Hopeless Grief. I feel like that would have been a better fucking title for this 3-hour fucking monstrosity. Because that's all it is. It's bitter, it's cold, and it's unjustified for any of its presentation. There's no reason to have brought in all of the content they did. It was not properly justified at all. No. And in fact, was justified terribly. It's not that they didn't try to justify it, their justification was shit.
It was very okay boomer in how it was written.
Yeah.
It's like an English professor in high school who says you can say fuck in your paper so long as you justify it. And you have the one kid who writes fuck because it makes sense for the character he's writing it for. And the other kid who says fuck because he likes to say fuck. That's what this is. And including all of the fucks in the movie. Not too many, but it felt silly.
It makes the decisions that it makes only because it wants to. And while that's not inherently wrong, what is bad is the execution. You still have to have some kind of thread of logic for the story, and all the logic that remains behind is the logic that they left from the original story.
They didn't do any of that. Yeah, it was all what they cannibalized.
Yeah, there's anything original to this is nonsensical as well. It can be entertaining.
So nonsensical.
It can be entertaining, it can be interesting to see, and in some parts it even borders on almost being okay.
That's why I was into the first bit of it. I was even still on board with the fucking the sex slave fucking rapey headmaster. I was like, okay, this is reasonable, especially, I can understand why this is included given more and more people talking out about abuse in the Catholic Church. But
they don't even tie it into
No, they don't.
They don't. But another thing I was going to say is I've noticed that when it comes to that particular period in media, that's a theme. It's a theme that it's always there. No matter what the media is, you will always get a throwaway line about the child that has been sold to be a prostitute.
Yeah, and sometimes it's played for laughs.
Sometimes it's played for laughs, and I usually end up walking away at that point. But
Yeah.
more often than not, it's played like it's played in American McGee's Alice.
Yeah.
Where you're riding through the carriage with Nan, and she's like, oh, those poor children are food for perverts.
Is that in the second game?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay, because I don't remember that. I haven't gotten there.
Yeah, that's in
Cool.
the second game.
Okay.
Because human trafficking is something that's touched upon in that game. Because that's something that has been kind of at the core of human societies. That are anytime we have a major city,
And at least
we're gonna have human trafficking.
And ladies and gentlemen, Industrial Revolution London. What a great place to be if you are a commodity.
Honestly, this
Industrial Revolution London is probably one of the most terrifying places I can think
it's
of.
a particular kind of filth and terror.
Which I think is, just as a sidebar, is I think a reason that a lot of people are so attracted to steampunk, because it's like, what if we took that but made it not quite so scary?
Really, though? I think that's a very, very good observation.
I also want to say that's why this particular genre of horror does so well.
Yeah.
What do you mean, this genre?
This, pseudo-historical horror.
Okay, that's
Yeah,
fair, that's fair.
for instance, a much better thing I would say that I would compare to would be The Witch, because that's an actual really good horror movie that is a historical piece as well.
Yes, that's some good shit. That movie is very good shit. So, after we get over, we have the whole, the rape shit, the sex slavery, then we have the business thing that kind of completely, once again, it does well, but also doesn't.
It hits more for the audience than for Scrooge.
Yeah, it really does.
Which is fucked up, because this is Scrooge's story, not mine.
And there's no direct connection. It's not like, because even the Ghost of Christmas Past said, I will show him things that should bring warmth to his soul.
I must say, having Scrooge be as outwardly resistant as they chose to have him in this really ruins it, because if Scrooge is not interested, why are you interested?
And he's not even an interesting outward resistance. It's just boring and petulant.
He's a child about it.
It's the stereotypical straight cis white atheist man.
He even has a whole fucking diatribe in The Office in one of the early scenes where he bitches about God. Because Cratchit's like, well,
I have to wonder.
You believe in God, right? No, and I don't believe in Alibaba.
And I don't think I remember Scrooge from the original story ever being implied to be an atheist.
It's not even. It's a non-issue.
I mean, if anything, he was devout, because
for the period it would be absolutely nonsensical. He could not have ever become sympathetic if he were also an atheist character.
Yeah.
So
he feared for his immortal soul.
The moment he realized these spirits were not dreams, he was like, oh, fuck.
I'd like to say, stab in the dark, Scrooge is the way that he is in this film because the director is kind of pushing too much of whatever his personal views may be into this character.
There's a strange agenda going on.
Yes, it has a very, I wouldn't say a clear agenda.
Not at all.
But an obvious agenda.
It's a head scratcher.
It's a confused but very present agenda. But
it doesn't
I don't
know
know
what it wants to say.
It's like, yeah.
It wants to say, a lot of something.
Very
but
loudly.
without saying a real message. So it touches upon a lot of topical things. Mental health. Hey, we included a black lady. Hey, she's powerful and she's doing things and she's proactive. Hey, we're talking about child abuse and human trafficking is a big societal fear right now, right? This will scare people if we add that. Like, it's trying to talk about a lot while saying nothing at all.
It really is wide as an ocean, deep as a puddle. I think it has such a massive bloated length to it, but goes nowhere fast. It's hurry up and wait, and I'm okay with a slow burn. I love a good slow burn, but this ain't a slow burn. This is a slow bore.
This is a dead fire.
It is, and it's not to say I was bored while watching it. I was very interested. But only for the fact that, oh, by the way, context. Chapter 1 just ended, and we're on to Chapter 2, which, Chapter 1 ends after Marley departs Scrooge's abode. That's what we're watching right now, yeah. Marley has left, and is now back in the dead Christmas tree field to tell Andy Serkis, and be like, hey, Scrooge is still a prick, but, you might have a shot. Speaking of rape, back at it again with that Christmas rape. Good old Christmas rape.
Good old Christmas rape.
Best kind
Just
of
like the
rape.
holidays with Dad.
Oh my god.
Oh yeah! Oh yeah! Woo! Coming into the second half, spicy. No poles punched.
You fucked it up.
Bitch
You fucked
ass!
it
I
up.
did fuck it up. God damn it! Oh, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to
I guess this would be a second part.
I guess so. Well, we had to have a break for our product placement. You know, the sponsorship. The wonderful company that sponsored us. NordVPN, Squarespace, Clash of Clans.
I wouldn't be sponsored by any of these people.
Mr. Butt Shave.
No.
I'm just trying to think of like all of.
I think that's Dollar Shave Club to you, sir.
It is Dollar Shave Club. That's what I was thinking of.
None of these people will ever be affiliated with us.
No.
No.
But if you go to unicornhunting.com//
y'all listen to Eminem.
and you put in the code YouTube.
I want to play a song called Venom.
Venom!
Alright.
Tom Hardy. Venom. Rape and Tom Hardy. So,
Oh geez.
What-
Don't put Tom Hardy in the
Tom Hardy produced this thing.
Yeah, but he didn't rape anyone.
No.
Just our child.
But it just had, yeah. Fucking, we're like right next to Ryan Johnson, apparently. And J.J. Abrams and George Lucas. Like, apparently they all created and raped our, yeah. Rape all around in the holidays. Hey, I got your present. What is it? It's rape. Oh.
Yikes.
It's bad. Very bad.
So currently what's happening on screen right now
Yeah, because remember, we're watching as we're talking.
is the Cratchits, Mr. and Mrs., are in bed having...
Not progressive enough for Mr. and Mr.
No, it's Victorian London. They were having a tense conversation about where the money to pay for Tiny Tim's operation to save his life 7 years prior.
Mr. Cratchit's
I
not.
come from.
Yeah, he's not buying the American Cousin bit anymore.
He's not buying
All those
it.
burned letters.
Well, she just straight up told him earlier.
She did. At this point, she had told him that there was...
Because she had a little bit of a breakdown over the fact that her child kept writing fake letters to a fake man.
I think it was twice then that she was like, there is no American Cousin, blah blah blah.
Oh, there's several times.
Yeah,
that she
but
says it.
but she was taking forever to get around to what her thing of who it was.
Yeah, what her fucking point was. All
Yeah.
along.
And also, since we're going to be addressing this topic now, because the movie is still very far from it.
Yeah. Scrooge hasn't met any spirits just yet.
Just Marley, and the future showed up and threw his windows open, but not future, past. But X-Men, days thereof. But so where this movie is at right now is, you know, they're just about to, you know, get to the Alibaba bullshit. We need to discuss the most important bit, because we had the cousin in America who's not real, and it's constantly like, oh, well, who is it then? And Mrs. Cratchit's like, no, I'll tell you at some point. Well, we find out in a bit that at first seems like it's going to set up that Scrooge is Tiny Tim's fucking actual father. Tim's his bastard son. Because he gets taken to Tim's fucking birth.
Right. This happens right after the whole event with the factory and the business stuff.
And the mine collapse and everything. Like, immediately, like, pa-ching!
He goes on to say to Scrooge, now, and I'm paraphrasing, we're going to see your greatest sin.
The monster that you've created.
Yeah, the monster that you've created. And then it shows Tiny Tim being born, and you're like, what
Lady
the
Cratchit in
fuck?
labor.
You're like, what the fuck, movie? What is this? Why are you calling Tiny Tim a monster?
It's like, are you being mean to Tiny Tim, or are you, like, using that, like, metaphorically because Scrooge, like, totally fucking had a thing with Mrs. Cratchit? Well, yes and no, and definitely a lot of no from me and the rest of the audience.
I think no from pretty much everyone.
Did you hear Roth? Roth even said no.
Yeah, Kat wasn't into it.
So after this unnecessarily shown bit of the Cratchit lady giving birth, we go to Scrooge's office 7 years prior, and Mrs. Cratchit shows up to beg Scrooge for £30 needed for all these medical procedures that small Tim needs. Oh, boy. Yes.
Thus ensues the back and forth you'd expect from Scrooge with a twist.
Oh, dude, it's...
He mocks her for needing his help, and then he sets down the 30 pounds on the desk and is going on a whole thing.
He makes a whole show of it, like going into the safe with the key. He's like, in that safe is 500 pounds. What would you do if I were to reach in and pull out 30 for you? What would you give? He's like going on and on.
And she's having like a mild breakdown because she would just kind of like a loan, sir. Like, this isn't some grand fucking thing. This is just a person, a human, asking another reported human,
a businessman
businessman for a loan. This shouldn't be an issue.
And Scrooge is canonically, Alistair Sim, canonically a fucking loan shark. That's one thing that he would do. You know, yeah, loans, homes, businesses. The man had his fingers in the pocket of every money bit in London. The corn exchange, guy was all over it. So loans were clearly within his wheelhouse. But instead he goes and turns this into some really unnecessary and fucked up.
Vile.
And she's like, oh, my husband doesn't know I'm here. He wouldn't want me to know that I'm taking a loan from the man he hates the most.
Right, because you just need to casually tell your husband's boss that your husband hates him.
Yeah.
That's totally something people casually do.
Yeah.
And so he tells her, like, take 10 now and then come to my apartment for the other 20.
Tomorrow at 4 and do exactly what I tell you when I tell you.
So she had to dip out on Christmas Day. Because it is confirmed later that was Christmas.
Yes, she was late for the burning of the figgy pudding.
Yeah. And so she goes to Scrooge's house.
Apartment.
Fucking excuse me.
Why does he call it an apartment, man? You brag about yourself. You're Ebenezer fucking Scrooge.
Right. Fuck. Maybe it's to make him relatable.
Millennials live in apartments. They know what that is, right?
They know what an apartment is. They know what child abuse and human trafficking are, right?
Those are hot button topics. They want equal treatment for the blacks, right?
I can be relevant.
So she turns up there, and like, you know, she has like such dramatic lead-up lines because she's like, Jesus, turn your head. Bob Cratchit, may you never know. And she's like realizing she's doing this very altruistic thing.
Basically, they're making the black woman sell herself so that the plot can progress.
And I do believe there was even the word auction used when they were talking.
Yes, Scrooge did use...
he said her virtue was on auction.
He said her virtue was on auction. Like, yikes!
Yes, because things did definitely get weird and uncomfortable because it's a major change up. So Scrooge is like sitting there in his chair and he's all like, I want to be very clear about what you think I want from you. Making Mrs. Cratchit be like, basically say, you know, through this absolute trauma that you want to have intercourse with me. You know, he's like forcing this out of her, drawing it out, like wrenching out someone's intestines slowly, making this pain and suffering last.
It is so un-Scrooge-like and so painful in multiple ways.
It's cruel. Scrooge is said to weigh everything by gain. Yet,
what does he gain?
Here he's like pictured as if he were he even calls himself a scientist of sorts. He does experiments, and to him...
Go back to Rick and Morty, dude.
Yeah, to be fair, you have to have a very high IQ to understand Rick and Morty.
Oh my gosh, shut the fuck up.
That's Scrooge the sapiosexual here. Because, just when you think, like, Cratchit's about to, like, fucking be in her fucking bra and panties... All of a sudden,
when Scrooge is about to rape someone on screen.
Yeah, we were pretty sure, and you know what, I want to take a moment here, if y'all want to be like, well, it's not rape. Yeah, it is. Fuck off. Like, it was coercion, it was threatening, it was not consented. She was basically forced into this position. She
was literally forced into this position.
She made this choice because she had no other choice, and Scrooge took advantage of her when she could do nothing about it, and thus was raped. But, oh no, Scrooge isn't actually a rapist because he is, even though, big plot twist they throw at you, she's about to be fully undressed, and then he's like, oh no, stop, never mind.
I want nothing to do with you, Mrs. Cratchit.
I don't want to fuck you.
I don't want to fuck anyone.
The intercourse I seek is intellectual. Get the fuck out of here. Scrooge isn't like an intellectual hoity-toity, I'm so smart sapiosexual. He's just a businessman.
And that's when he does this whole bit where he's like, your virtue is up for auction. And he's like trying to justify how him doing this was meant to test the limits of human love.
He's doing an experiment on how much value there is with human emotions and what the currency exchange rate is.
He's like, you could place a price on compassion, on envy.
In-universe explanation for him traumatizing
Lex,
people.
how do we know that?
Because he's fucking said it.
Yeah, because he fucking tells us. You know, just like everything else.
Through dialogue. Jeez.
My head is burning.
Go ahead and rinse it.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Can I? Is it alright?
If your head is literally burning,
go rinse.
Yeah.
Because this is your second bout.
It's burning. Like.
Go.
Okay, I'm sorry. I hate to use you. I'm sorry. I apologize.
Why does everybody use me?
It's your lot in life.
Oh.
It burns.
Just go.
Fuck! I hate it.
Just go.
Jesus.
Dipshit.
It's like watching a dog in the battle with saran wrap barrier.
Fuck's sake, it hurts. Get it off. It's like the equivalent of you walk onto a bed of nails and the whole time people are telling you to get off the bed of nails and you're just fucking standing there like, oh, but what am I gonna do? Are you sure? You're sure? Like, no, just get off the fucking bed of nails, asshole.
in doing that, Scrooge is like, oh yes, I have no interest in you or anyone else in such a way. Purely intellectual, trying to put the cost on everything. And naturally, she's just like, bitch, the fuck? The one appropriate reaction to anything.
Honestly, this is the only time in the entire series that anyone behaves like a real human.
Because poor Miss Cratchit is just dumbfounded. Because yes, now she has just been raped, not physically, but she has been emotionally, mentally abused, manipulated, and raped. And Scrooge is just like, yes, that's what I wanted. You can go now. And then, to top it all off, you know, again, Scrooge being sadistic rather than just unfeeling and uncaring, Mrs. Cratchit says, never mention any of this to my husband. And then he's like, well, if he stays with me for another, 10 years, I won't. And also, if he leaves before that time, my mouth might slip. So, make sure he stays with me. Like, what?
Which makes no fucking sense. Scrooge isn't going to give a shit. He cares more about having an employee that's doing the job correctly than who that employee specifically is.
He just wants to torture this woman.
Yeah, and that's so un-Scrooge-like. He's not a monster. He's just a selfish asshole.
And then this is where Mrs. Cratchit says my favorite line, my trailer line. The line that is why I didn't care to watch this at all from the start.
After she fucking goes on like a 5 or 6 line curse roast about how much she hates him, you know, biting the hand that fed you. A hand that should be bitten, yes, but immediately is like, don't tell my husband about what I did, but fuck you, you fucking piece of cunt shit. Like, oh, you really think he's gonna stay silent after you roasted him like that? That's a gamble, Mrs.
She
Cratchit.
goes on this tangent about how she is a woman and she has the power to summon spirits, and she fucking will. And I would like to note that this is the only black woman in this entire thing. And what do? They have a trailer moment of her threatening to curse someone with spirits from the beyond.
And not even a trailer moment, it's like the trailer moment. It's the end of the trailer stinger.
It's their punchline.
It is.
And it's horrible. It's... Oh god, and here's Alibaba.
And what we're watching, Alibaba's finally showed the fuck up, and Scrooge justifying its existence with laudanum.
Because he still refuses to just accept that they're there. Because, you know, he can't just be a cynical Christian man for his time. He has to be apparently a staunch atheist.
So, yes, so the whole Cratchit thing, that's what happens, and he's like, get back to your figgy pudding. And while we were at this, when I was washing my hair, I thought of something, in which this reminded me of the Michael Bay Transformers movies.
Oh, jeez.
It's that everyone hates each other in these movies. Everyone's mean to each other. There is
no
love.
No love at all.
Between Mr. and Mrs. Cratchit. None.
It's obligation.
There is no love at all.
The closest we get to see of love has got to be between Lottie and Scrooge. But even then, it's tense and it's terse.
And it's just, there is no joy to be had there. You don't see them loving each other. It's always this, like, it's always the accusatory, you did this, don't do that. You know, I'm having all secrets and shadows and no love.
None at all. It says a lot about what these people who created this see in people and in the world.
And I think this is a great time to mention something that Kirby had looked up while we had took a break, and that was, you know, we need a break from talking about the rape fun by talking about the actual people who created this for us. Kirby, what did this man work on before? The writer?
This writer was one of the 3 people who created Who Wants to Be a Millionaire.
Okay, boomer.
Alright, we gotta think about this one. Like, you created Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, now you think you're, like, how... the irony of making that and then making a fucked up, terrible, butchering retelling of A Christmas Carol, something at which money is a central theme. Like, what are you doing? Who are you trying to appeal to, and what are you trying to say?
It's like I said, they're trying to say a lot of nothing. They are... The implicit themes within the original telling of A Christmas Carol are inherently pretty anti-capitalist.
And very easy. It's like, it's pretty black and white as far as its content. There's no gray in it.
It tells you straight up. The poor are exploited. The rich are the reason for it.
And the rich keep the poor poor. Make them poorer. They push them down.
Yeah. It shows you through many instances where the people who are the unequivocally the good people in the story are those who have heart, are those who care about one another. And that's kind of the point. Scrooge is a proto-Grinch. He needs to learn that the concept of Christmas is greater than the monetary value of it.
Yeah, exactly.
This is like if you made the Grinch a rapist.
Isn't that what they did in the new, like, DreamWorks Grinch?
Oh my god, did they?
No.
I could have believed it because it's fucking Benedict Cumberbatch. I could see him as a rapist. He's probably raped someone in real life.
Probably. I mean, we don't have any confirms on that.
Like, I'm not going to spread rumors, but I'm just saying I could see it.
Yeah, it'd be like one of those things, like, you hear about it on the radio and you find out, you know, that this dude, like, fucking diddled this kid, or, like, you know, this guy fucked this chick, got her fucking drugged at a bar or something. And then you're just like, you look at it, you're like, oh yeah, of course, I'm not surprised, you're a fucking scumbag to begin with. And he's one of those people who I could be like, yeah, that probably happened.
Yeah, it's like, I wouldn't be cheering by any fucking means, but I won't be like, oh no, I can't believe that this has happened.
Yeah, it's not great. Not great. So, after all this just terrible malarkey, we finally get ditched. I forget how the Ghost of Christmas Past even bails after the whole...
I don't remember either.
Prostitution thing. But eventually, somehow, he pieces out and is like, yo, you a dumb motherfucker.
Yeah, pretty much.
And who shows up instead of fucking, like, Jesus, Santa Claus, Ghost of Christmas Present, but instead, Scrooge's sister, Lottie.
Which I'll say, I like this change conceptually.
Yes. Conceptually, yeah, hell yeah.
The execution, oh my gosh.
And bearing in mind, the Ghost of Christmas Past pretty much hangs out for, like, one whole entire episode. The whole second episode is all him all the time.
The first episode is pure exposition.
The second is pure past. Then the third is like, oh yeah, present, future.
Yeah.
These things exist, right? Yeah, let's do this. And Lottie is a scientist, apparently, now?
Yeah, that part is not really expanded upon or explained.
They don't talk about, like, you know, if she maybe, like, stole the father's riches to go to school, because it's implied she might have killed the father? Killed the old man's
I don't know if there's
senior Scrooge?
There's some subtext there in the confrontation scene that lead us to believe this. And, oh, jeez, it's just... So we get our other female main character, right? Like, we have Mrs. Cratchit, Black Voodoo Woman.
Because she fucking will summon spirits.
Yeah, I guess. And then we have Lottie Scrooge.
Yeah.
Who, I guess, was interested in science. That pays off in no way, shape, or form, but she was interested in science, so she understands why Scrooge abuses people for science.
Yeah, she and is like, hey, I get that, but don't be like this. So instead of doing her job as the Ghost of Christmas Present does to show the joy and the light, the heart and the warmth.
Because no one is allowed to be shown as happy, loving, or content in this fucking film.
This soulless, hateful shit. We see Bob Cratchit's terrible Christmas Day. It's really a stinker of an evening.
It's awful. Honestly, the Christmas they do get isn't much better.
No, but this one just bombs really hard.
Right. Mrs. Cratchit is being forced more or less into trying to explain the situation with the fake American cousin.
Dude, Bob is going so hard to get an explanation.
He is. It's a little, unnecessary. Dude, your kids are right inside. It's Christmas Day. That you can let this wait.
And he even did, the night before, they're, laying in bed, and he's like...
She already told him, we'll talk about it later.
And she's like, you awake? You awake? You awake? Hey, where'd you get the money from? Where'd you get the money from? Where'd you get the money from?
Ridiculous.
It's like kids at a sleepover, except it's this lady's husband just bothering her. And I mean, I get why he wants an answer. I do. As someone who has been in a situation where I felt like my significant other had done something untoward for whatever reason.
You knew something was being hidden.
And I wanted those answers, so I understand Mr. Cratchit's approach and his insistence, but it does begin to drag out to something inappropriate when it's dragged out before the entire family. It becomes uncomfortable, to say the least.
Yeah, and then we get this reveal that in times of stress, they can see ghosts.
Yes.
Which, who the fuck is they?
We had mentioned that earlier that people could see spirits in times of great distress and emotion, yes. And that's revealed when we have this scene with Mrs. Cratchit about to reveal to Bob where the money came from. And all of a sudden, Spirit Scrooge, the one who's there with Lottie, starts becoming visible to her. And Lottie says, in times of great emotion or stress, they can see spirits.
And the movie just leaves it at that.
Who are they?
Are we meant to believe that she really is magically powered and so she's able to see their spirits now? Is it just people in general? Is it women? What is it?
Black people? What the fuck are you saying?
Please, movie, have a coherent message.
And
it's not that hard.
It was an interesting decision that I could kind of get behind, like I said, of people being able to see spirits and feel Scrooge's presence.
But it's just kind of told to us.
Like everything else.
And then there's no time to really digest that or any consequences of it. Because it's just, she tells a lie that she probably would have told anyways.
Yeah, she tells something about, a lady I knew who had dementia, I stole her jewels and sold them and paid for the surgery.
Yeah, she probably was going to lie about that anyways, because we have no reason to believe that she was going to be honest before she started to see Scrooge's face.
And then it goes double into the dumper when they go back in to have dinner, after being begged to spare the day and not bring all this shit up. She's feeling even more fucked up and guilty now. She sees Scrooge standing at the dinner table in his spirit form and starts screaming at him to get out of her house. Meanwhile, no one else in the room can see this. It appears that fucking Mrs. Cratchit is just having a fucking mental breakdown in front of everyone.
Yeah, so that happens. And then,
oh, man.
And then they go to the graveyard, right? And
for the memorial mass.
Yeah, and they go into a, what are they called? The little house things that they put dead people in.
Mausoleums.
Mausoleums. Yeah, they go into the mausoleum, and there's a singing choir.
Oh, they were in a chapel for the choir. Yeah, that was a straight up chapel.
Okay, it looked like a mausoleum.
And they had a bell. Remember the bell that the Dark Souls boss had?
Yeah.
Oh, we'll get to him.
We'll get to him. They go into the chapel, and there's the relatives and the friends and the family of people who had died in those accidents. They are all in there singing and remembering the people who they've lost. And then we see the boy from the beginning.
The guy who pissed on Marley.
And then the ghost proceeds to explain that he pisses on Marley's grave, that thing that we saw. And,
yeah, remember that? Remember that strong opening? Remember that? We're trying to milk it for all it's worth.
Yeah, bring it back around.
And it's weird because Scrooge almost seems to like be excited for a second when he sees them all, singing and everything. And he's like, Spirit, do they hold no malice in their heart? And she's like, well, most of them, no. But then this guy, and then
in particular.
And then you see Piss Kid just like standing there, like looking furious, and the sister mentions, "Man, you do have a powerful presence," thus implying that once again people knew that old fart Scrooge was around, fucking up their day.
And I want to note that this is another place where the timeline gets inconsistent, because when she feels it necessary to tell Scrooge about this kid's pissing habits, she makes note that this kid has made a tradition of every year taking a train up to London to piss on Marley's grave.
Yeah.
Now, which is
Wait a minute!
Has Marley been dead a year or multiple?
And this is the Ghost of Christmas present! It's happening because it's meant to happen that day, because we see the scene Scrooge interrupts when he breaks back into the Cratchit's home at the end.
What is that movie?
What the fuck is... Yo, I didn't realize that. Yeah, they said he made a fucking habit of it.
Every year.
Yeah.
And this movie doesn't know what it's doing.
I think perhaps this is an issue, if I think perhaps exactly about the context of what they wrote, this is an issue of very poor word choice. Because as I recall correctly, Lottie says he travels every year from London to London, whatever, to pay his respects. And I think that she genuinely means to pay respects, but it also it's too strong implied that paying his respects is pissing on Marley's grave. I think they set that bit up and just failed to explain what they truly meant properly. Either that or they were just fucking fucked the whole time on it and had no idea what the timelines were. Sloppy writing either way.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with the second one, honestly.
I'm trying to, like, help them out here.
Bring some kind of logical coherency to it.
Yeah.
There's none to be found.
Yeah.
Are we gonna talk about
there's no choice.
Our favorite boy?
Our
Dark Souls boss?
One of many.
One of many.
Actually, he looks like a Dark Souls or Bloodborne boss, but behaved like a Sekiro one. Regardless, a FromSoft boss. We come up, Lottie's like, yo, I gotta bail. Like, good luck. And Scrooge is like, I'm not gonna repent. He's the worst
one.
Yeah, she's like, he's the unknowable one. He's the worst one. He's like, well, I'm not gonna repent. And she's like, well, you better not talk shit to this guy. He takes no excuses like I would.
At this point, also, it's worth noting, in the original adaptation, Scrooge is ready to repent.
Like, he sees the joy. He's ready for it. He's severely traumatized, but he knows he's got to take this last step forward because he'll learn his most important lessons. The Ghost of Christmas Yet to Come has always been my favorite because, yeah, it's the edgy one. It's dark. It's death. It's where the movie really starts to get creepy and weird because, of course, Scrooge is dead in the future, and we all know how that goes. But I said, as this scene was gearing up, this is going to be a big make or break moment for me. Is this edgy, over-the-top movie going to do with the edgy ghost, the edgiest, darkest of all of the ghosts?
So what'd they do?
Well, they had a few good ideas, and then they ruined them. We see shots in which Scrooge is going about the chapel, and there's large amounts of shadow, and he's looking around, he's like, yo, where the fuck is this guy? But, like, I'm ready, I'll listen. Scrooge goes to the altar, and you see a nice shot of the entire church behind him, because he when they're in there for the ceremony, it's all there. They step out of the graveyard to talk for Lottie to leave. He goes back in. Church is destroyed. Cool idea. He goes to the altar, and then you see behind him, way in the behind, like where the doors to the church would be.
Lurking like the Babadook.
Yes. Effectively creepy, though. You see this out-of-focus, very large, shadowy figure just step out, emerge, like, melt into the shot. And I was like, oh, shit. All right. And then he steps forward some more, and Scrooge is like, I know who you are, I know this time, and then you see this dude's got a fucking bell, a big-ass bell he's carrying behind him, and he starts, like, slamming it and ringing it, like, fucking, this is time, this is it, Scrooge is counting it, it's building up, and once the final toll is struck, he stands there, and then fucking Scrooge says something else, and dude fucking throws the bell through the wall, and it's like, yo, holy shit, this guy means business. And he turns around, gets close, and hobbles on over to Scrooge, and what do we see?
The Silent Brotherhood.
Oh my god.
So, if you don't know what the Mortal Instruments series is, it is a YA, contemporary fantasy series by Cassandra Clare, and in it there is this character type. It's like a group of characters called the Silent Brothers. Their entire concept looks like what this fucking show decided they were going to do the Ghost of Christmas Past as. Just this, Ghost of Christmas Future, as they were just going to. He's just a guy. He's just a bald guy with his mouth sewn shut.
And he said, I understand you cannot speak to me because you know the future and you are not allowed to speak it. Like, so, and in many other versions of Scrooge, and practically any other version of Scrooge, yes, the Ghost of Christmas Future is mute. And that bit becomes oftentimes a little difficult for the Scrooge actor because they have no one to play off of. They talk to the spirit, but the spirit offers nothing in return. So for that, the scenes are carried by Scrooge's out loud observations and him paying very direct witness to what's going on.
The problem is
that already is the movie!
That's the whole fucking film! Like, what?
So imagine this drawn out Scrooge and everyone talking forever and ever at each other, and then just have just Scrooge talking to nobody even more. And this one really misses the mark.
On everything to do with this particular spirit.
This spirit, they fucked up the worst. Because this spirit was it was not meant to explore Scrooge's, where he came from, not meant to explore joy. It's meant to be like, look at how much you're fucking hated and how glad people are that you're gone. Is this what you want to leave behind? That is completely trashed in favor of continuing with the Cratchits. Because they wrote themselves into a corner with it.
They've made Scrooge, through all of their changes, irredeemable. They have made him this too broken to be saved by his own words.
Yeah, he's like, nah, man, there's no hope for me. Fuck that shit.
They've made him abusive where he previously was not. They've made him a manipulative bastard in ways that he previously was not. And none of these changes justify they don't add to the story that they're, I think, trying to tell. They are arbitrary. They change these things just to change them, not to tell a better story. Like,
Dark Souls Man, Bloodborne Man. Bloodborne Man goes and takes him to... it is addressed about Scrooge's death. There is directly the scene in which Scrooge is in his bedchambers and sees his body underneath the blankets and pulls it up and he's like, oh, I'm dead. Huh.
Yeah, and my favorite scene from that part, which is the whole conversation with his servant selling off his belongings.
Gone.
Not present at all. In fact, he doesn't have any servants.
One of my favorite lines from the entire thing is cut out when the fat bankers are talking. And they say, oh, when did he die? I don't know. When's the funeral? Soon, and it's likely to be a cheap one. I wouldn't mind going. If lunch was provided, but I must be fed. I love that! Like, fuck yeah, I'd go to a random funeral for someone's free lunch. Hell yeah! Gone. Nothing.
It's totally appropriate. It shows how little impact he really had on the world because he was not kind.
They're trying to make him be this, like, absolute intense monster. Oh, you know what? Gotta break here. We forgot to discuss this scene near the that we saw with Christmas Past, where, because again, that's what's on screen now, where he showed him a possible future he could have had if he hadn't been a piece of shit. And the Ghost of Christmas Past thought it was fucking hilarious that Scrooge had emotions for a woman and child's he never knew, but yet doesn't care about people who are real. And that's something.
The ghosts are fucking wishy-washy.
Cruel, but yet, like, wanting to help, but not, like... And I get they're pissed.
And sometimes they'll make observations that are appropriate and accurate, and other times they're just taking the piss out of the situation. Which is fine in itself, but, like, why don't they have motivations? They're driving the story along at this point, not Scrooge.
Scrooge is just dragging it.
Scrooge has no motivations.
He's just hanging out.
And the ghosts even less so.
The ghosts are in it for shits and giggles. The only one is Marley.
The only one in the ghost situation with any motivation is Marley. And anyone else, the only one with motivation is the Cratchit parents.
The Cratchit tribe.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, they call themselves that. That's...
Twice, the Cratchit tribe. Like what?
Makes it even more tonally deaf.
That's not what they would have called themselves.
Like, it's not period appropriate in any way.
No, it just doesn't.
It feels
work.
like another thing about, look, a black person.
It does. So, the corner that has been written into now is a very disastrous one, because a key hitching moment for Scrooge in all of these is Tiny Tim's death. He can't bear to see, knowing that Tiny Tim will die, that he could do something about it. Well, in this version, he already did something about Tim's sickness. Tim is getting better, because Scrooge did the whole fucking money gift for the rape of Mrs. Cratchit. So Tim's not deathly ill. So we gotta think of some other way to fucking kill this kid. And that ends up becoming the most contrived, terrible finale that they could have come up with.
So instead of Tiny Tim's prophesized death having anything to do with anything that Scrooge could do to prevent anything that matters with Scrooge's whole morality test, no, he dies because he's a stupid kid, and he goes out and he borrows his sister's skates without telling anyone what he was doing or where he was going, and he falls through the ice and drowns.
At the skating pond. Scrooge had literally absolutely nothing to do with it, other than the fact that it was the day after it was Christmas Day.
Yeah.
It was Christmas Day, and Cratchit had gone to Scrooge's business to leave his note of resignation. But, that's the only thing Scrooge had to do with it. Just so happened that he happened to be Cratchit's boss, and Cratchit went to his workplace to leave his resignation note. That's it. Scrooge could not have... Even if he was the best person in the world, there was no way he would have had any effect on Tiny Tim's death in that moment. That was pure fate and chance. Nothing of Scrooge's actions had anything to do with it.
Right. Meaning that emotional beat is just bleh.
Because Scrooge says, will Tiny Tim survive? In all these other versions, the present says, I see an empty chair by the fireplace and a crutch without an owner. If these visions remain unaltered, I feel the boy will die. Scrooge knew he could do something about that. This whole falling through the ice thing, nothing to do with Ebenezer Scrooge.
So, was there anything else wrapping up his time with the ghost of the future?
He freaks out, tries to, run away from the ghost and escape, and there's this, 5-second bit where he's, being pushed through different doors by the ghost of Christmas Future. He ends up back in the graveyard eventually, watches his grave get pissed on by Cratchit, which I actually liked. That was funny.
Oh yeah, that was good.
And then the Ghost of Christmas Future just kind of fucks off. Like, you don't see him.
Just disappears.
He fucks off, just like Barbie in Toy Story 2. Didn't think that one was going to come up, but it did. So yeah, FromSoft guy fucks off. Scrooge decides to have a lean against the piss grave. And Lottie comes back, and... No, wait, no she doesn't. I'm full of shit. She does come back, but not here. Marley comes back. And is like, huh? You learned nothing, huh?
After all of that, after we all sat through 2.5 hours so far.
Of this bullshit, because the weird bullshit, because when we see Tim drown, like, Scrooge is in his office, and he's looking up at the ceiling, which has become the surface of the pond from below, and we see the ice fall, and we watch Tim, like, drown, floating, suspended below the ceiling as if he were underwater, which is a cool effect, but why?
It's like they had the idea for the shot, and became
This reminded me of It.
Yeah, right? They become so convinced of its amazing potential as just a shot that they forced it in.
And they show Scrooge trying to run through all these, like, fucking passageways as Tim is dying, have the piss bit, and they're sitting there with Marley. It's just like, yep, not coming back, can't be redeemed. I fucked up. Marley's like, wow, I really wanted to get out of this. You suck. Scrooge's like, yeah, I do suck. But then, the big culminating moment, the one that apparently is Scrooge's redemption, is him saying, but if I could have one thing be different, it would be that the spirits would not take the life of that boy, that they would not do these things and spare the life of that child.
Something that the spirits also have no control over.
Spirits do not have any effect on the lives of man in that regard. But apparently, that was a selfless enough act to make all the spirits kind of, like, lean out of, like, from behind, like, the mausoleum and the graves, and be like, oh, okay, he redeemed. Marley goes away, they go away, it all, like, reverses back to present day, and...
We get the cringiest fucking Scrooge's back from his adventure that I've ever seen.
Dude, this is so bad.
He just walks out of the graveyard, and then people see him, and then he's back in the real world. There is nothing with him waking up or scaring his maid, because again, he has no servants for some reason.
No asking the kid in the street to buy the fucking goose and giving the kid a massive tip.
In fact, one of his biggest, like, moments in the end, showing his character growth, buying the goose for the Cratchits.
Doesn't happen.
Doesn't
at
happen.
all.
They had a goose already.
Just like when he's supposed to talk to the two charioteers who come to his office asking for money, and he does, are there no prisons, are there no poorhouses? But they stop him on the street in this version near the beginning, quote, quote, beginning. And he's supposed to, like, you know, find them and make things right with them. They're not addressed again. They're just gone. Fred's gone, because remember, he does not go to Fred's house at all.
No, he goes to the Cratchits.
He goes to the Cratchits!
Who do not want to see him.
They hate this man. And he knows it.
And because he has not grown as a person and there is no character redeeming, like, moment...
The finale goes over like a wet fart in church. There's no emotional high pitch to it. No stakes.
It just sort of happens. He goes there and he's like...
He shows no emotion either.
No, he just really insistently says, I'm going to help you now.
Yeah, it's like, spirits don't kill Tiny Tim, I want to help. No, there's no proper thematic setup to it. He does not feel changed. It feels pathetic. And then carrying on with the rape in this film, he rapes their home with his presence.
Mrs. Cratchit is screaming at him to get out. She doesn't want him there. He's invading her private abode.
Lady looks like she's about to fucking puke all over the place. She's about to be sick.
And he just stays and keeps insisting that he's going to help their family now. And he's giving Bob Cratchit a raise, so it's all glitter now.
He's like, you can resign if you want. You'll make more money at your new job. And they're like, how the fuck does he know any of this? He's like, I'll pass along the high thing. And
they address that in universe. All the weird shit that he shouldn't know, that he learned from the spirits, that he now knows, that he says that he knows.
And he says he knows it because of the spirits. He's like, the spirits, they showed me.
And it's like, okay, crazy old man fucking Scrooge needs to go.
He's like, first thing, second thing, but also second thing, third thing, also the second thing. Like, he's trying to, like, list off all these numbers. He's trying to enumerate all the things, but he's failing at it. And is that's somehow symbolic? Like, he's ditched his OCD because he's a good person now? Is OCD only for bad people? Now he's a scatterbrain?
Isn't that pretty much the point of this entire film, though? That mental illness makes you a bad person and you can never grow from trauma?
That's what it seems, because he still seems like just an absolute crap house. He will not leave their home. He goes on and is scaring the shit out of the kids.
It's just a madman.
He's like, how do you know my name? How do you know I needed new ice skates? He's like, I'll get you new ice skates. And all the while, Mrs. Cratchit is like, please leave. And he's not leaving. And he's like, I'll write you a 500-pound check. Leave. No, hold on. Number 3. He just won't leave. It's so embarrassing.
And then it's just kind of over.
He leaves and is like, will you ever forgive me? I don't expect it. And she's like, no, I won't. No love, no joy. No, not that there should be there, but that is where it ends. There's no warmth following that.
And I want to say that we've reached our end of this summary discussion of this film, and we are only just now getting to the part in the movie where he rapes Mrs. Cratchit.
Yeah, like, and we really haven't left anything out. We pretty much surmised everything as best we could. And this is just how long this fucking production takes to get to where it's going.
It's just a bunch of long, uncomfortable shots.
And
chapter
3.
3.
Yeah, we just ended chapter 2 to chapter 3.
Just got into a bag of gravel.
So past sticks around for 1, 2, and like half of and part of 3. Past is most of this fucking series. And also, what we forgot to mention was Scrooge's solution to saving Tiny Tim from drowning by skating.
Right. He just goes and he takes, I presume, a bag of salt, and he just throws a bunch of salt all over the skating pond. And he's like, oh, no skating will be done here. But that's not how physics works, Scrooge.
I get, you want to put the salt down to melt the ice. That's how you melt ice.
But all he's done is made the ice thinner and more likely to break. If anything, he has confirmed the death of Tiny Tim and possibly dozens of other children. Scrooge has, effectively, in his attempts to be a better person, become even worse than he had been before. Now that he is proactive, he is proactively hurting more people.
Because the ice is not going to melt that quickly, and it was implied that Tiny Tim perhaps even died that very next day. Future seemed the next day, at least with Tim's death. It seemed really fucked up and weird, and so, like, no, you didn't prevent anyone from skating. If anything, you just cost more lives, and maybe Tim still. Ice doesn't melt that quickly just because you laid some salt down.
I do want to note real fast that, again, we are just starting the 3rd chapter. That's still the Ghost of Christmas Past.
Yes.
He sticks around for a while.
Yeah, we had mentioned.
Just needed to mention again.
Yeah, and the 3rd chapter, Mrs. Cratchit is only now just about to get raped. So remember, when we were talking about that like an hour ago? Yeah, that's just about to happen. We're on the 3rd and final chapter, and we ourselves are done telling it to you.
And it could have been told in an even shorter time.
We were just hanging out and having a fucking talk about it. We could have done it even quicker, but Jesus fucking Christ. There's no reason it needs to be this overwrought. And it leaves you feeling empty and soulless. It's just
kind of gross.
Kind of gross. There's no proper ending to it except for when Mrs. Cratchit's like, he. We have much work to do. So she did summon the spirits?
So...
Like what?
Like, all in all...
Befuddling.
What the absolute fuck is the message? What is the point?
I don't know. it seems like they came in here with a strong idea of reinterpretation and subversion of the tried and true, and it's like terrible, edgy, emo Christmas Carol fan fiction. It's the Hunt Down the Freeman of A Christmas Carol. Like I said, he looks like Adrian Shepard. He looks like him. He acts like him. He talks like him. You know, like when someone's like, well, God save us. No. God will stay away from this one. Like, the kind of shit they say is so similar. Inspired. Dare I say it. Inspired.
The creative forces...
That was going to be the title. It was going to be the title. We were going to call the podcast Inspired.
That's right. Inspired.
Polyester Friends Inspired Podcast. We'll figure it out.
Yeah, we'll figure it out. This entire production feels like it has been cobbled together by a bunch of different loser Redditors who like, oh, this will be edgy and subversive. Look at this. Oh, we gotta appease the feminists. We gotta do all of this.
Gotta appease the blacks.
Like, it's...
Checkbox.
They forgot the Jews.
What about the gays?
Well, that's there with Scrooge and Marley.
That's subtext only.
Hey, the gays, they're lucky that's all they get. That's lucky that's... Bleh, bleh, bleh. They're lucky they at least get that!
That's all, folks!